Welcome in, everyone. This is The Vegas Verdict, and today we are looking at the topic of TikTok, and the question we're asking is, should TikTok be banned? Our legal expert joining us today, none other than Tony Abbatangelo. He sometimes goes by Tony the Tapper. He's the former judge, and he has legal advice for us on a number of issues. But today we're talking about TikTok. I want to get your opinion on the TikTok issue, but first, we have a short montage of video clips, news clips to show you. Let's go ahead and take a look.
The US is poised to ban TikTok unless the social media app cuts its ties to China.
The yeas are 352, the nays are 65.
50 Democrats and 15 Republicans voted no.
You need to make your voices heard.
Call them and tell them to stop the ban.
TikTok appealing directly to its users.
And we had millions of kids calling Congress, in some cases threatening suicide.
Our intention is for TikTok to continue to operate, but not under the control of the Chinese Communist Party.
The company maintains it is not owned or controlled by the Chinese government.
This legislation, if signed into law, will lead to a ban of TikTok in the United States.
The House of Representatives took one of the most aggressive legislative moves the country's seen during the era of social media.
If signed into law, it would give Chinese parent company ByteDance just 6 months to divest TikTok or face the possibility of a ban on the app. The legislation prompted by national security concerns, including fears the Chinese government could access Americans' personal data and feed them content that would influence their views. Now it goes to the Senate, where it will likely face a tougher road.
All right, that was obviously just a short clip of what the issue is here. But Tony, let me get your reaction first of all to this. You've been following this in the news somewhat. What are your thoughts?
Well, the big picture is, of course, Congress can pass a law. That goes back to basic government rules, goes through the House, then it goes to the Senate, then the president has to sign off. So what will happen eventually is this will be challenged in the courts to see if it's constitutional or not. That's the big picture of the law being passed.
And the way I understand it, there's a 6-month period that the Chinese owners have to determine whether or not they want to stay on or divest their U.S. interests. So that could happen. Their hand could be forced ultimately if the Senate does pass it as well. We have a guest with us today, and Miranda Lopez, thank you so much for joining us. She is a social media expert, has a history of working in entertainment PR with Caesars here locally, and you and your sister together are influencers yourselves. You have the Social Sisters, which is, well, why don't you describe it for us? It's a platform where you cover a lot of different social issues, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. The Social Sisters, we really try to cover all things social media, social storytelling, social events. So we handle a lot of individual clients, whether that's social media management, influencer management, PR, communications, marketing, really kind of just keeping a pulse on everything in the communications and marketing industry. So, you know, we're closely tied with TikTok on a daily basis, and
right.
it's very interesting to see what's panning out.
Part of what you do now, too, is you manage influencers. So they would be directly impacted if, in fact, there is a ban. Give me your thoughts on that, and what are you hearing from some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of companies now, too, are hiring us to just hire influencers. That is their primary form of marketing. That is the primary way that they are driving revenue. And I think that's the biggest thing to look at is which categories of businesses are going to be impacted. You know, big businesses, small businesses, artists, artisans, influencers. And, you know, influencers, for a lot of them, one single post, one single brand deal, one single organic video even can drive enough revenue for them to be set for the entire month. So this could mean a lot for those individuals especially.
Well, there's so many different people doing different things, especially on TikTok. And like you said, it's a whole variety of people that are going to be impacted with this ban.
Definitely.
And let's be honest here. If you have 1 million followers, that amounts to power, influence, and you know, revenue. Whenever you have all of those things, you know, money involved, politics is going to be involved as well, and potentially government in general is going to want to try to regulate or control on some level. Which brings up the other issue related to this, and probably the bigger issue that we're looking at here. Is there a concern with respect to individual privacy rights, and what the government is saying is that there's actually a security potential threat out there? Tony, give me your thoughts on that.
Well, that's been the argument that the government has been saying. This is a national security threat. As we said before we started the taping or view of this video, is to me it's all political ploy. Trump started it. It's all the Chinese. China is evil. Tariffs against China. China. Right? I get it. But to me, all this stuff is already happening. As we've talked about on other shows, I'm a practical guy. This is already happening. And like I love to say, Mr. Snowden or Snowden, however you say his name, only we can spy on our own people. We can't let China spy on us, right? That's what's going on here. So, and I get it. And Miranda, you made a great point. You know, they can also find in TikTok, if they give up this data, or physical locations, credit cards, debit cards, all kinds of communication. And I get where the government is saying, look, and this has been going on for eons regarding spies. So I'm a government official. I have access to sensitive data. Cute young lady like Miranda comes over. She starts flirting with me. We start having our pillow talk, and I'm giving her records, and she's dropping it in the old case. And at the, hey, the parrot flies south for the winter. And that it's a constant game. But now it's just on internet.
But regardless of government controlling the data, I mean, the internet has had access to all this data for decades, since the first time the World Wide Web launched. I mean, credit card information, addresses, as you mentioned. So, maybe all it's going to take is really one U.S. investor to get their hand in the pot and say, this is the type of data you can access and this is the type of data you can't. Maybe that's the simple solution. Maybe that's all we need.
And that's the question here. Is there a line that needs to be drawn? And do we start to define exactly what that line is? Because, I mean, how far can we go with this? And you're right, there are other platforms. I was thinking recently about Ancestry.com and 23andMe and some of these. I mean, these are worldwide. You're giving everything, including your DNA, to these folks, right? So in terms of database, it's out there. But where do we draw the line?
And that's where, like I said, again, I've said this before, if you're telling me the United States, as well as China, Russia, and numerous other countries, don't have a whole group of people working in a basement somewhere with some crazy servers already doing this. It's already happening. Yeah. So where do we draw the line? Are we going to hurt private enterprise? And the spillover effect is what you said earlier, Miranda, which is I'm just average Joe on TikTok trying to get my enjoyment watching silly videos because my son will send them to me, my daughters will. Or an influencer who gets 1 million views or whatever and they get their monthly paycheck. I mean, businesses, just like back in the day, not your day, of course, Wheaties, they put a superstar on the cereal box.
Same concept.
It's the same concept, just on a different platform, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, so obviously we have the big businesses where now TikTok is a branch of marketing. Like it is its own entity. It has its own budget. It's its own line item. Then you think of the smaller businesses that I work with on a daily basis that don't have that budget. They can't, go out there and be spending $2,000 on one single post, but they're able to boost those individual posts. Or maybe an organic post just happens to go viral and helps that small business get off the ground. Same thing with the artists and the artisans, as I was mentioning. A lot of these people who make handcrafted items, they can't have a shop on Etsy. They can't have a website. They can't afford it, but they can post on TikTok, and that's where they get their sales. Then, back to the influencers. One single brand deal gets them set up for success. I mean, the list goes on and on. Stay-at-home moms who can't get a full-time job, but they're able to make money on TikTok. So I think there's a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the questions that we're going to discuss right after this break is the potential outfall, the potential reaction if in fact it is banned, because some people have been threatening suicide, others have been threatening violence. They're going to attack elected officials.
Crazy.
Is that something that is actually on the table? Could it potentially happen? We'll pick it up from there. Coming up right after this break, you're watching The Vegas Verdict, and we'll be back after this.
If you've been injured in an accident, you don't have to go it alone. At Paul Paddle Law, we understand your injuries aren't just physical. They also bring financial burden and emotional strain. At our firm, it's not just about legal representation. It's about genuine care and commitment. Lock in the attention you deserve from your attorney. We'll get you on the path to recovery. Call Paul Paddle Law. Legal security when you need it.
Welcome back, everyone. This is The Vegas Verdict, and we're discussing a very hot topic that is in the news today and in the news currently. Should TikTok be banned? Congress already voted to have the Chinese ownership divest their U.S. interests, and whether or not that's going to happen, now it's up to the Senate, but we're having a pretty lively discussion about that. One of the questions I had, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Tony, is let's say we don't have any more Chinese control. Is it better to have U.S. government control?
Well, you know me, I'm a moderate, so I get people on both sides upset with me. But I'm not a fan of government control because it's subject to too much influence, I'll just say politely, where there's ulterior motives.
Right.
So when you got the government putting their hands in everything, I get certain checks and balances that need to be in place. But on the other side, when they start like this TikTok ban and what we were saying earlier, this has a big effect on a lot of people that are just everyday people that are trying to make a living. One thing that Miranda said was, you know, what about the stay-at-home moms that are earning a few extra bucks doing something? What about, you know, I remember on, what was it, YouTube, that one young lady called me crazy. She had no contract, and she went big. And, you know, there's so many opportunities.
To have a viral moment.
To have a viral moment, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, but in TikTok just happens to be the big one. And I think you had mentioned earlier, like Tumblr was one, and that came and went. You know, that's what happens. I mean, let the market dictate what happens.
Miranda, what are your thoughts on what, in fact, could happen if TikTok goes away? Do other platforms kind of pick up where they left off? And also, I mean, are we going to see a lot of outcry and reaction? I mean, what's your gut feeling?
I mean, in terms of the social platforms, social media is cyclical. We go in cycles, you know, thinking back to MySpace days, then, you know, that's a little lower quality content. Then we go to Facebook, and that's any type of content you want, and Tumblr, and that's, you know, the creative, any type of content. Then we get to Instagram, a little higher quality content. Then things start getting, you know, it's important to really strategize and think about what type of content you're creating. Now we're at TikTok. I think if TikTok goes away, Meta is going to see a lot of growth because people are going to lean on Facebook and Instagram. Same thing for YouTube. People are going to lean on that, not just for revenue, but also for entertainment and for creative outlets and trying to get their content out there somewhere. We've already seen a ton of new platforms popping up. You know, Lemonade is one of them that is kind of trying to combine Pinterest and TikTok and Instagram all into one. So I could see them taking elements of TikTok and integrating them into their own platforms.
Well, that's the other thing. You made a great point about people that I work with that have TikTok. They don't do anything but look at funny videos.
Right.
You know, and my wife, she loves animals. So the only reason she looks at Instagram is to watch dog and cat things. It's not all about, like you said, business and influencers.
And I think that is why maybe there is a bit of that outcry from the younger generation. You know, you're seeing the headlines of 16-year-olds freaking out, 14-year-olds freaking out. But that is their primary form of entertainment for a lot of them. And if they don't have streaming services, a lot of people don't even have cable anymore. I don't have cable anymore. So I think it's very different to see how younger users will be impacted, and I'll be anxious to see if they're the ones that are the most concerned about it, or if it is the people who are more dependent on it for revenue versus entertainment.
Well, my kids are 19 to 26, so same thing. They don't watch TV. They watch YouTube. They watch videos.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different situation.
Platforms are changing.
So
all
if
the
we
time.
go back to the original point, is it a big deal that the Chinese government knows where my kid is and what can they do? And I think that as a national security issue, there are certain people that are vulnerable, and you want to use it as, once again, as a spying technique. And that's where a lot of what I've been reading is the federal employees cannot use TikTok on their, I presume that's their government phones.
Right.
Also, states have passed that law and it's been upheld. But as for the general public, it's a First Amendment issue, which is freedom of speech.
I do think a line needs to be drawn, and I might be the dissenting vote, but I think a line does need to be drawn. I'm not as concerned about those influencers and about that audience because I think they will pivot. I think they will find another platform. And yeah,
Absolutely,
it might be a
I
speed
agree.
bump. It might be a speed bump for a little while, but no job is forever. We've all had this kind of up and down situation. Most people have, and you pivot and you overcome ultimately. And I think that would probably be the case here.
So what is the line you would like drawn?
Well, and that's the bigger question. I mean, where do we draw the line, and who's drawing it? Is it U.S. government drawing it?
They are,
and
right?
I think
That's what's going on now.
probably they're going to be the regulators in this, and
Well, and that's why I said earlier, I get government regulation. You can't have the robber barons, where you built U.S. Steel, where they're paying people $1 a day, and if they fall in the vat of burning fire and they die, big deal. I mean, there's got to be a balance.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the line is, and here's the other thing: getting a U.S. company to purchase ByteDance out of it. Does that really change much? I mean, I don't know. There are a lot of unknowns, and that's what we're not hearing.
Right.
What's going to happen if we put the line here, or even way over here?
Well, does that mean that now every single platform is going to be evaluated for what type of data is being collected and is being scraped, for these advertisements and things like that? Does that mean that now Meta and YouTube do have larger concerns as well? Because depending on what line is drawn, that might trickle over into all the other platforms.
Or is it okay because they're U.S. government, they're U.S. company,
right?
So we don't care if they scrape our data, like you said. Mm-hmm. I mean, where does this end?
yeah, it's hard to know where it ends. And what if it's actually run in another country, but you can still access it via the internet? Does that mean you can still participate and put information and do your own thing regardless? I mean, there's a lot of questions.
And I did read that India banned TikTok.
Okay.
And that was a huge thing because that's such a large population. And allegedly, what India was saying was that there was personal information of, I don't know if it was government officials or people in general, was being utilized or given to the Chinese government. So I get that. I mean, you can't trust the Chinese government. You can't trust the Russian government. I mean, Putin, I think he narrowly won his election, right? It was very close. Like 95% of the vote. If you didn't win, vote for me, die, isn't it?
Yeah,
right?
something along those lines. I think they're all pretty close, unless you are, we're going to issue a verdict here very shortly on exactly what we should do. And I'm a little torn myself, too. The question we're asking is, should TikTok be banned? But let's go around the table and each give our thoughts on what we think will happen and what we think should happen. And then we'll give our verdict when we come back. Go ahead, Tony. You can kick us off. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think should happen?
Well, what I think should happen is this should be thought through completely. And like Miranda just said, I didn't even think about what about the American-based companies? It is okay for them to free will and do whatever they want? Because, I look at something on Facebook, next thing you know, I'm getting emails, I'm getting little ads popping up for all kinds of stuff that are related to that topic.
Yeah.
So I'm getting spied on. So I think it needs to be thought through much more than just a political theater than it is. I think it's really political theater right now. And I do think, sure, some regulations should be put in place. Yeah. And I have no idea where this is going to end up.
What those are and what that line is.
Well, I think where it's going to end up is they're going to vote the ban.
Yeah.
Biden's going to sign off because it's a political issue, and it's an election year.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Politics will influence. Miranda, what are your thoughts on what you think will happen?
Well, from a marketing perspective, I will hopefully say that I don't think that it will be banned. I do think there should be some form of a line drawn, as you mentioned. You know, what type of information can be scraped, what type of information can be traded, and what type of information is being collected from all of these platforms. Yeah. And I think as long as there's, you know, I don't know what the FTC thinks about all of this. I don't know what everyone else thinks about it, but I think there should be some type of line drawn. But I think the implication of it getting banned is going to open a can of worms for too many other platforms. So I don't think it will happen.
That's a good point. I think also there should be uniformity. And I tend to think that maybe it is time to draw a line. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that we're going to hold the Chinese government to task. I think the Senate will vote the same way Congress did. And I think ultimately the Chinese government will give in because they're still going to get paid. There's an agreement there where they're still going to get...
What's the value of that company?
Right. They're still going to get their money. And if they don't take that and run, then maybe their intentions were somewhat nefarious. Maybe they are more concerned about, hey, we want that information more so than the monetized part of it. So we will stop and take a break there. And when we come back, we will issue a verdict. Should TikTok be banned?
Legal troubles require swift action, and there's only one attorney who's quick on his feet.
Legal troubles don't wait, and neither should you. I'm Tony Abbatangelo, a former judge with 30 years experience. I know the judicial system, and I know what will work for you in court.
When your circumstance requires a skilled negotiator who knows the law, tap into Tony. He's a former judge who can defend your rights. Call 707-7000.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the Vegas Verdict, and boy, we've been having a lively discussion on and off camera about our subject today. The subject is TikTok and whether or not it should be banned. Obviously, Congress has voted in favor of the Chinese ownership group divesting its U.S. interest. It goes to the Senate now, and ultimately it goes to the Vegas Verdict, at least for today. And so now it is up to us to determine whether TikTok should be banned. That was our question today. On 3, everyone, let's decide, should it be banned, yes or no? 3, 2, 1.
No. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what's called a hung jury. If you can't make a uniform decision, at least in a criminal case, that's when you have a hung jury and you get a new trial.
Boy, it's great to have a judge on this panel because he understands exactly how these things work. I think we collectively did decide that perhaps a line does need to be drawn, but very difficult to determine where that line is. We need uniformity, I think, with all of these platforms. It's going to be very difficult to ban it altogether when you're talking about all of those companies and individuals who use it as a monetizing platform. So,
and I think, Gerard, you made a great point.
Yeah.
It's people will pivot.
Yeah.
You shut down one avenue, people go down another one. And like in your business, you said you use Insta, Meta. I'm trying to remember all the right terms, but the short version isn't. Yeah. And then when one shuts down or is no longer popular, shift gears.
The only choice we have is to find a way to keep making money and finding a way to express our creative outlets, and that's it. It's all we can do.
I think at the end of the day, Miranda wins no matter what, because they're going to pivot and she's going to guide them one way or the other. And we all probably need to.
And we need her help.
Yes,
so
we need her help.
Social
sisters, right?
As long as there's social media, I'll hopefully still be needed in the world.
Well, like I told you, the internet's overrated. It's not going to last.
And with that, we'll cap it off, everyone. You've been watching The Vegas Verdict, sponsored by Paul Patta Law. We want to continue the conversation, so head to paulpattalaw.com, and we will have our emails there, and we'll have the thread posted. You can join in on the conversation. Give us your thoughts. I imagine this is something that we will be revisiting again soon, and maybe we should just schedule a follow-up after the Senate votes and things start to get a little bit more real for all of those influencers out there. Thank you very much for watching. This is The Vegas Verdict.